Hello and welcome to my design commentary for my time trial 3D platformer I created, which I ended up titling Boosterific. So I'm just going to kind of talk through the design process, my inspirations, my reasoning for everything that I have created for this project now that it's all done and dusted. So starting off, I'll just load into the hub world here. But firstly, I'll go with what I first created for this project all the way back in my first week, the glide feature that's showcased here. Very simple feature, literally just hold right click, the simple glider model I created in Unreal will turn from red to green when active, and the player's gravity scale is decreased. Very simple, but provides this nice sort of slow descent, slow fall gliding for the glider, naturally. Next off, secondary mechanic I made was the jet boots, which I just made another simple model in Maya. They go from, once again, red to green when active. Yeah, just sends the player straight up, gives increased air control for a nice bit of movement. And the last thing that really ties this three-part movement system together is my boost, which changes dynamically depending on what the player's state is. As you can see, just if you're walking or like jumping through the air, you just get this small boost here. If you do it while you've got your jet boots on, it will fling you upwards a bit more than it just does the standard little like small boost here, as it actually does it based on your current speed. So it rewards good boost timing for, if the example I just boost now, you know, it sent me a bit up, but if I once again boost towards the top, I think I screwed up the timing there, but you want to leave it as late as possible to boost once you've already built up a bit of speed from your jet boots, and you'll get a higher boost. Just rewards timing. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, if you boost while gliding, you gain a more significant boost than, you know, just jumping and boosting. Dynamically changes based on what type of movement you currently have going, as that was kind of the core essence behind this three-part movement system. As of course, I wanted to make a platform that focused on, of course, like the mastery and like time trial elements of it being a time trial platformer, of like, you know, learning the movement, understanding it, replaying levels to get your best possible time. And as well, that I wanted the movement to feel nice, satisfying, but have a bit of like easy to pick up, but it has a bit of knack to master, which I feel this three parts movement system I set up here does have, because it's just simple, you know, left click to boost, right click to glide, shift to do your little boost. It's really easy to understand, but possibilities of it and that whole boost timing, depending on how far you want to launch yourself, that, you know, gives a fair bit of depth to the movement. But yeah, as well as interacting dynamically with each other, I actually made a few things that also interact dynamically with the player's movement, which I feel would probably be best showcased here in my second level. As this is the level that has, well, several mechanics actually. I'll showcase the one that you see first here. Is first level is there's no hazards. Actually, yeah. I'll talk through that, because that actually makes a lot more sense. So level 1 here starts with no hazards, no nothing. It is just you and your environment. Of course, with this only being like a vertical slice slash like demo of what like a full game with this like movement system could be. Of course, there is a lot more that could be done here, but I just want to simply showcase like 3 different varieties of level difficulty. Of course, here, first level, no hazards. It's as I've said, just you and your environment. Your goal, of course, reach the end of the level as quick as possible. A few different routes, a few different ways you could do, but relatively simple. Now, returning to my second level here, you have these red objects here, which, as I will demonstrate, are hazards, and you can't touch them. And if you do touch them, it sends you to where you last were before you touch them. So it will naturally set the player back, and is of course a hazard to the whole time trial gimmick of trying to do it as quick as possible, because if you touch a hazard, you know, you're going to lose time. But as well as that, this level also features one of the systems that dynamically interacts with the player. Here's one. I have these sort of kind of like, I guess, power-ups. But we have the boost spheres and, as demonstrated there, fuel spheres. That one there, pretty self-explanatory. It just gives the player more fuel when they touch it, so it allows them to keep using their boots for longer, maybe give them a dash back if they didn't have the fuel to do a dash. It just allows the player to push their movement a bit more, you know, and also frees up a bit of creativity with the level design, as you could sprinkle those throughout to, you know, give the player more jet fuel to have them cross a longer gap if they can manage to, you know, make it to the spheres in time to keep their fuel from running out. Now, this is the more interesting one, the boost spheres, which come in two varieties, the blue, which sends you up, and the white ones, which just boost you forward, which interact dynamically with the player. This one, as I said, launches you upwards if you touch it, but as you can see that boost it's given me when I jumped on it then is not enough to actually make it there on your own. You could, if you get the timing right, ta-da, use your jet boots, unless you of course hit the ceiling like I did there. That is one way of solving this puzzle, like, well, not puzzle, but getting over this gap would be to jump on that and then use your jet boots. But there are more ways that this can interact with the player's movement rather than just jump on into jet boots, because if you activate it while your glider's out, it sends you even more higher, which then, of course, with that ceiling being there, you have to undeploy a glider and redeploy it to stop yourself mid-air. But if that ceiling wasn't there, you could just ride the massive boost that jumping on that with your glider out gives. Here we have one of the boost spheres, which, when touched, will launch you forward. And once again, if you did that while you had your glider out and you were boosting, for example, that will fling you at high speeds, which in this instance is bad because you're going to hit, of course, that hazard there. So you don't want to do that. But later in the level, as you saw then... Oh, okay, I'm screwing this up. But, well, you've seen it in action once, so I'm sure you can imagine. Here, you have another boost one that launches you up. And if you go into this, it just slingshots you again, based on your current movement. You can just touch it, and they will, of course, slingshot you from one into the other, which builds up momentum. But if you also were to boost into that, you go even faster. But yeah, the boost spheres working off the player's current movement allows them to interact dependent on the way the player decides to, you know, interact with it. Because if you decide to go into a boost sphere slowly, it will still boost you. Maybe enough to cross the gap, maybe not enough to cross the gap. But the quicker it launches you, the less control you have over where it's going to launch you, because you'll be going at such speeds. So the player needs to kind of gauge how quick they want to, you know, go into it and launch. As, you know, that's kind of the whole thing I wanted with this free system movement, was dynamicity? I don't know if that's a real word, but I just wanted it to dynamically interact with itself and other mechanics here, which I showcased with the spheres, but of course in like a full-fledged game built around this movement system I set up, you could do a lot more things. These collectibles power-up things here can be scaled, As you can see here, launch velocity, they can be changed per instance. You could do so many things. You could have a sphere that will increase the player's max, like just speed in the air, so that way they don't need to boost to get as much out of these spheres, and make a lot more systems that dynamically interact building on top of this. But for this vertical slice, I just kept it simple. But yes, the movement system was one of my big things with this, but so was the time trial mastery elements, which, as you noticed, when you begin a level, and then you pick up your jetpack and jet boots, and you start a timer. This time is, if you complete a level, recorded. I'll showcase this with the first level since it's the shortest and easiest, but with, of course, time trial, players are going to want to see their progress and see their progression of, are they improving, etc., etc. So the timer, of course, shows their current time, the level, how they're doing. Each level has a few alternate routes. Once again, for this vertical slice, I kept it simple and there are only a few minor routes. For example, up here, you can go across these donuts, or if you go down here, you can go through the rings/donuts instead. 2 different routes. Top route is quicker, but there are alternate routes and a few shortcuts players can take if they know what to do / how to do it with the movement system. I think it's the second level, it might be the third one. There's an area where you can boost over a whole set of things if you hit one of the well-timed boosts off the top of your thing. But once again, with more like, I guess, well thought out and further planned levels compared to what I created here just to showcase mechanics and things, you could do some really interesting things with multiple routes, etc., etc. Really add a lot of replayability and mastery to each level. But as you'll see here when I complete this level, currently the base times, actually I'll get into that here as well. Of course, this is where the player's best times are shown. If you hit tab, it brings up this menu on top of the base UI. The base times by default are just set to 10 minutes, just to store that information. If I jump in here and the level, I got 1 minute 40. That now saves, and I got a rating of great, which is the second highest, with the top rating being a homage to the game's name of Boosterific. But yeah, that time is saved here for each of the levels, and then, of course, as I beat level 1, so I've unlocked level 2, and if I beat level 2, I'd unlock level 3. But each level is just a bit, introduces new mechanics and is a bit harder than the last. This one is the one that introduces the orbs and, of course, hazardous objects. Level 3 introduces moving objects, well, not moving hazards, as well as, of course, turrets, which I will actually showcase. These are more active hazards than the passive sort of just red objects of the second level, and just showcase one of the things you could throw at the player to challenge them a bit more, make mastering that level a lot more difficult. Really kind of just, yeah, increase the difficulty of the game and experience. But as you'll hopefully see if I can get to it, the turrets fire knockback projectiles, which throw the player's movement off. I might just, yeah, you know what? I'll just move the player start over to where some turrets are. But yeah, it's another way of challenging the player here was, wow, that's got flung a lot further than I expected. Another way of challenging the player, of course, here is the movement turrets, which, actually, yeah, that's a good segment to show them off. This is a bit of a harder section featuring the turrets. There are 2 routes, as you can see. Actually, I'll also showcase alternate camera here just to get a bit of a better look of what's ahead of you if you want to do so. At the cost of course, like, you lose out on depth and all that. But there are turrets in this room, as you can see ahead here. And as you have seen when they shoot me, they knock me back. And yeah, that knockback, of course, if you try to do this platforming here, if you do it successfully, of course it's like the quickest to go up top, because it saves you having to get knocked down here and go up. It's another challenge you can throw at the players. But the interesting thing about these projectiles is, while they are a hazard to the player and, you know, they knock you around, obviously not to places where you're going, they can be utilized by smart players to actually shoot them forward. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to pull that trick off, but, well, that, for example, it just shot me and it knocked me through that gap. So, if players position themselves right against a turret, they could actually abuse this, what's meant to be a hazard, to actually boost them forward and perhaps get a quick time in the level. There are a few other systems you could do built on the same premise of things that punish the player, but also, if utilized in a smart manner by the players, could in fact reward good positioning and timing, like such, to further, you know, reward mastery and learning a level and learning the systems of the game. But I just did that to showcase such a concept for this vertical slice. But yeah, I think that's all the specific systems talked about here. Right, which leads me then on to my inspirations for this. There isn't really any, like, major, I guess, like, jetpack-based movement games out there, aside from, of course, Jetpack Joyride, which this is not really that kind of game. But my main inspirations from this derived from two main places, really. With the whole, like, VR cyberworld aesthetic I kind of envisioned for a game like this, where you're testing out, like, a jetpack system in a, like, VR holo sim, preparing it for real-life production. I, of course, got that from Cyberhook, which is a, like, time trial, mastery perfectionist platformer about a grappling hook, which I very much liked the idea of that, and I kind of was like, well, what if instead of, like, a grappling hook system, it was instead a jetpack? Because a lot of games feature jetpacks, but as, like, a side thing, they don't, like, feature it as a main staple. And in a lot of games, using a jetpack is fun. It's enjoyable, so why not build, like, a whole game around using a jetpack, which then evolved into this, of course, like, jet glider boost system. And my second main inspiration was Star Wars Bounty Hunter, because that is a game with a very integral jetpack, and it's one of the few that immediately sprang to mind. Because that is a core bit of your movement throughout the entirety of that game, is using Jango Fett's jetpack. Another few bits of inspiration, of course not as big, were, of course, GTA series. A few of their games feature jetpacks. Prominently, GTA 5's jetpack from the Doomsday expansion on GTA Online. But that was really, I just kind of, a lot of games have jetpacks, but not many games feature it as a primary thing, so what if I took that, put it on a platformer as the primary movement system was the player's jetpack? And then, of course, what if I made it a time trial mastery platformer like Cyberhook, is where I got a lot of this from. But yeah, so those are the two things that kind of really inspired me for this. Unfortunately, due to, of course, the way a jetpack system works, it's very different to most traditional platformers. You know, most platformers, you have, like, a jump, a double jump, maybe, like, a roll, air dash or something, which I kind of have in my form of the boost, but it's very different to most, like, stereotypical traditional platformer systems that you envision when you think of just platformer games. So I didn't really have the most to look at and reference with this. I did find a few challenges with the jetpack system. So maybe that's why no one else has really capitalized on making such a primary mechanic, but I find the movement system I've set up here to be enjoyable and fun, and I feel if turned into, like, a fully fledged game, and systems I've built upon here in this vertical slice were built upon it, you could have a really solid thing on your hands. But yeah, unfortunately, when creating this myself, I didn't have the well, I didn't really have anything like it to reference in terms of like jetpack games. But I think I did well with what I have here, and I think all the systems I have managed to come together to create this very fun, like, just, yeah, time trial jetpack platformer. I feel I've set out to do what I wanted to do with this, and I've achieved my goals.